Well, it's been really interesting being at this session in Amman, Jordan, for the media training hub. I've been to Jordan many times before over many years, but this was a great opportunity for me as a journalist to meet many Jordanian colleagues who were really interested in the huge changes that are affecting the media all over the world. And I think there are two points that I will take away from this session. The EU is doing really good work in the context, I think, of its neighbourhood policy and trying to help the development of media in the partnership countries like Jordan. I think that Europeans are in many ways privileged. They live in economically advanced, free societies where the media happily doesn't really have any difficulty in operating, of course, within the law, but there's nothing really in the way of censorship. It's rare to see political pressure on media organizations, or rare to see it publicly, certainly. And so we have a huge advantage over countries in the Middle East and elsewhere in the world which don't have the same systems, where freedoms are not taken for granted, where governments are far more intrusive, where journalists, as a habit acquired over long years, they will tend to self-censor, but also be very aware of issues that cannot be tackled easily because of government disapproval. So I think that's one big thought. I think it's also important for Europeans involved in this to be really aware of those differences. So while it's great to talk and to give advice from our own experience in Britain or France or elsewhere in Europe, as myself and other journalists do, I do think it's very important to be aware of the differences in the circumstances in which journalists operate. So talking about changes in the media, the enormous things that are happening to all of us, the transition from print to digital, the role of social media, that's all true, and there are universal issues, but we must be aware as well of the local issues of the particular circumstances. And I think the other point is this, actually, to carry on from the previous thought. It is very striking, this hunger, this thirst for understanding these huge technological changes that are taking place and how it affects our work. We've just been looking at the role of social media. Hard to imagine today, any of us, I think, a media world, a world generally without Twitter and Facebook. And it raises really, really important questions about how we professional journalists do our jobs. And it also raises the very important question of what is a professional journalist when citizen journalism, people who are able to send tweets or post videos or give us their thoughts on Facebook, are doing that all the time, all over the world, in vast quantities. How do we, who work for what we used to call newspapers and perhaps now should call digital platforms, how do we deal with that? So it's fascinating to see how everybody is struggling with the same questions. And there are some answers and there's some advice. But overwhelmingly, I think the feeling is wherever you are, in Europe or in the Middle East or elsewhere, everybody is struggling with the implications of constant transformation that touches, of course, not only on how we do our jobs, how we report, how we tell stories, but also how we survive economically as media organizations against this constantly changing background. So those are some of the questions that we've discussed, and I hope that I've made some contribution to clarifying my thoughts, my experience on some of these issues. But I think anybody who imagines that there are definitive answers to these problems anywhere in the world is kidding themselves. This is an ongoing story, and it's not going to end anytime soon.